she had her, I'm sure, her periods of quite, desolate behavior and desolate feelings.
For as long as anybody can remember, Elton John has been a controversial figure who is also incredibly talented and kind. Their relationship with Princess Diana, however, goes much deeper than the general public knows. The world was enchanted by their relationship until it abruptly crumbled. For a long time, nobody knew why they split up. However, in a surprising twist, Elton John has finally spoken up and disclosed the truth. King Charles was a major factor in the demise of this legendary friendship, not merely chance or miscommunication. When Diana broke up with Elton, what factors did Charles consider? The most critical question is why, after decades of remaining silent, Elton has finally chosen to come up. Come with us as we put together the remarkable story of Princess Diana, as revealed in Elton John's shocking revelation. Every time Elton John takes the stage, heads turn. Being a guy who has lived multiple lives, both in the public eye and in private, gives his statements weight beyond his position as one of the most beloved artists in the world. Although Elton is well known for being candid, there are still some anecdotes that he holds dear. One such narrative up to this point was his friendship with Princess Diana. Unveiling the reasons for his split with Diana, Elton finally spoke up in an emotionally charged interview, exposing a reality that caught everyone by surprise. The split between them, according to Elton, was more than just an opinion gap or misunderstanding. Rather, a third party, specifically King Charles, had a substantial impact in causing them to drift apart. Those who had followed Diana's life for a long time, and those who were fans of Elton's, were both stunned by this discovery. The notion that Charles, who had been officially separated from Diana for quite some time, could have exerted such an enormous influence on her intimate connections further complicates an already convoluted story. Nobody took Elton's choice to break his silence lightly. As he continued to explain, he realized that the moment had arrived to speak the truth, despite the gravity of the situation and the waves it would cause. We need to return to the start of Elton's friendship with Diana, which took the most surprising turn, if we want to grasp the magnitude of his disclosure. Their paths initially crossed during Prince Andrew's 21st birthday celebration in 1981 on a balmy summer night. Diana was only a few steps away from becoming the new Princess of Wales, still reeling from her fairy tale wedding to Prince Charles, while Elton, who was already a global celebrity, performed. An unusual sight for such a prominent occasion, the celebration remained mostly deserted as the night progressed. However, something mystical was about to unfold on this empty stage. Elton and Diana were alone in the ballroom, and Diana, who was usually ready to escape the stiffness of royal responsibilities, was no exception. As the energetic Charleston was being played by the dance band, Diana approached Elton on the spur of the moment and asked him to dance. Two famous people, who couldn't have been more different, came together on a deserted dance floor. It was like something out of a Hollywood film. The two briefly shed their princess and pop star personas as they danced, giggled, and frolicked. This chance meeting blossomed into a lifelong friendship, despite its transient nature. Diana and Elton became inseparable after that night. Their connection sprang from something deeper and more intimate than simply a common ground of celebrity or prestige. Although they presented themselves in a glossy light, both of them were emotionally fragile souls who battled the stresses of daily life. Diana sought comfort in Elton's compassion, sensitivity, and humor when she was ensnared in an unhappy marriage. Diana, on the other hand, was a welcome change for Elton. She was a buddy who could poke fun at the idiocy of monarchy and fame, and who treated him with the respect due a superstar. The world seen them at innumerable public occasions together, sharing laughs and clearly enjoying each other's company throughout the years. However, a bond far more intricate than anybody had anticipated was beneath those smiles. Although they experienced immense happiness as a result of their friendship, it would later cause them immense suffering. Diana and Prince Charles's marriage started to fall apart, but their relationship with Elton only got stronger. The allegedly flawless royal life of Diana started to crumble by the mid-1980s. Hidden under the idyllic exterior, her mental health was severely suffering due to the strains of royal duties and a worsening marriage to Charles. Although Diana kept much of her difficulties with bulimia, self-doubt, and loneliness disguised from the public throughout this era, they started to surface at this time. When Diana needed someone to confide in when she thought the barriers of Buckingham Palace were too high, she turned to Elton, who had his own struggles with addiction and mental health, rather than any other acquaintance. Many of Diana's anxieties and annoyances, stemming from her marriage to Charles, would surface in these private times. Diana would talk openly about her sentiments of loneliness and hopelessness during long, late-night phone conversations, which Elton remembers. Her husband appeared more concerned with protecting the monarchy's reputation than with making her happy, and she felt shackled in an unhappy marriage as a result. Charles was emotionally aloof and preoccupied with his connection with Camilla Parker Bowles, rather than working to mend the gaps in his marriage, which was a major setback. Diana found someone to listen to her and weep on when she felt like she was going crazy, and that someone was Elton. Their friendship, nevertheless, was not without its ups and downs. Actually, their common sense of humor was one of the main factors that brought them closer together. Diana and Elton had a fondness for life's quirks and a quick wit. They frequently provided comic relief for one another by sharing anecdotes on the absurdity of fame and the peculiar demands of their respective roles. Something really remarkable about their connection was their capacity to discover happiness throughout life's most challenging circumstances. Despite this, Diana and Charles's relationship deteriorated as their friendship deepened. Charles wasn't on the sidelines watching Diana's problems. He had a hand in molding the dynamics of her friendships, including Elton's, as Elton would confess later. Although things between Diana and Charles were becoming worse, there was something even more disturbing going on in the background. In his new discoveries, Elton revealed a harsher truth. King Charles had been subtly manipulating events, which led him to believe that Diana's personal troubles were to blame for the growing gap between them. The increasing fame of Diana was a danger to Charles, who had long been anxious about the public's perception of the royal family. Overshadowing even Charles at times, her humanitarian work, honesty with the public, and capacity to establish emotional connections with people had made her the most admired royal figure. His ambition to manage the storyline, which included her friendships, increased in tandem with her influence. Now Elton has come clean about how Charles started to micromanage Diana's private life as she made headlines for her relationships with people outside the royal circle. Charles was especially worried about Elton's flamboyant nature and his ties to controversial causes like his AIDS Foundation, which were prevalent around that time. Charles was worried that Diana's relationship with Elton would bring shame to the royal family, and the traditional royal family was unwilling to associate itself with such causes. Charles started to quietly push Diana to put some space between herself and Elton via this prism. Although it wasn't explicitly said, the message was loud and clear. Her connection with Elton was becoming into a burden, and she should distance herself from him. As the tensions rose, Diana felt the weight of her commitment to Elton and her wish to maintain harmony within the royal family. Even though Diana and Elton didn't realize it at the time, Charles's hidden influence caused a split between them that would remain scarred for years to come. In 1997, a few months before Diana's untimely death, Elton and Diana's relationship reached its breaking point. While the AIDS crisis was still widely stigmatized, Elton had been diligently working on a charity coffee table book to help his AIDS Foundation. This cause was very dear to his heart. At first, Diana, ever the humanitarian, had consented to write the introduction to the book, which was to showcase pictures of famous people. For Elton, this was a watershed event because Diana's participation would do double duty: raise awareness for the cause and make talking about AIDS less taboo. Members of the royal family were among the few prominent persons who were prepared to be associated with the problem at the time. Elton was overjoyed to gain Diana's backing since her support meant the world to him. However, Diana's sudden withdrawal from the project caught Elton off guard. He was left bewildered and heartbroken when what appeared to be a firm commitment abruptly crumbled. For what reason would Diana give up on something she felt so strongly about? King Charles had the key, as Elton would come to disclose. Anxieties about Diana's participation in the contentious project were voiced by Charles, according to Elton. As the protector of the monarchy's reputation, Charles was concerned that Diana's affiliation with any political or confrontational group may cast a negative light on the family. Diana withdrew her support, much to Elton's despair, after being pressured by Charles. What would become an agonizing separation for Elton began with this episode. A betrayal of their relationship, and the things they were both passionate about it, seemed to be the overwhelming impression. That was just one more way Diana's life was no longer her own. Relationships that had formerly brought her happiness were crumbling under the pressure of royal expectations. In the months after the charity book scandal, Diana and Elton's friendship went into what Elton would later refer to as the deep freeze. The warmth that had previously characterized their connection appeared to disappear abruptly, and their once regular phone conversations and meetings decreased to nearly nothing. Elton endured excruciating agony throughout this time. Diana was more than a princess to him. She was a genuine, imperfect, and profoundly human companion who had stood with him through the worst of circumstances. He felt like he was losing a piece of himself when he abruptly severed ties with that person. Knowing that it wasn't really Diana's choice just made the pain worse. Because of Elton's awareness of the role Charles had played, the separation was much more painful to endure. Diana, in contrast, was dealing with her own internal struggles. Her public persona, her feuds with the royal family, and her growing sense of loneliness were all wearing her down. Not only had she started to withdraw from Elton, but from several of her closest friends as well. It seemed like she was trapped with no way out as the gates of Buckingham Palace closed in on her. At the same moment when their relationship appeared to be irretrievably shattered, a tragic event occurred, unexpectedly uniting them once more. The killing of Gianni Versace, a personal friend of Elton and Diana, shocked the fashion industry in July 1997. Elton and Diana felt something far more personal in the wake of his horrible murder, which horrified the globe. Because of their shared connection to Versace, they were reunited after his passing. Diana and Elton ended themselves sitting together at Versace's burial in Milan after being estranged for months, according to some unusual turn of events. The strained dynamic that had previously characterized their relationship appeared to dissolve as they were brought together in their shared sorrow by this immense loss. They seemed to be getting back together after months apart as they held hands and said sweet nothings to one another. This was a bittersweet time for Elton. Even though the situation was tragic, he was thankful to have Diana back in his life. A close friend had passed away, and the stresses of public life had taken a toll on their bond. It was as though they were able to set everything aside and concentrate on their link in that shared moment of grief. Their reunion, alas, would not endure. Tragically, Diana's life would be abruptly ended a few weeks later, forcing Elton to cope with the loss of not one but two dear friends in that little period. The devastating news of Princess Diana's death in a Paris automobile tragedy on August 31, 1997, brought the whole globe to a halt. People all across the globe expressed their sorrow in a way that the contemporary world had never witnessed before, and the shock and sadness were felt instantly. The anguish, however, was quite personal to Elton John. After months of estrangement, Elton had only recently reconciled with Diana. Suddenly, she was no longer in his life. That loss was so heavy it was nearly painful to bear. Even though he was aware that Diana was having a hard time, he never thought her life would come to an abrupt and sad conclusion like this. In the midst of global grief, Elton had the unenviable responsibility of finding a fitting manner to bid farewell to his beloved friend, while also paying tribute to her life and the special relationship they had. Knowing that performing at Diana's burial would be a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, Elton accepted the invitation. For the sake of himself and the millions of others who shared his grief, he had to do it correctly. One of the most memorable events of the modern era ensued. When Elton performed a revamped rendition of his song "Candle in the Wind," which he had written for Marilyn Monroe, it became a moving homage to Diana. While he sung "Goodbye England's Rose," the entire globe sobbed. During this time of global sorrow, Elton's voice served as a fitting soundtrack. Although Elton's performance at Diana's burial was a moving display of passion, not everyone was on board with the idea to have him sing. Fresh information suggests that King Charles was first apprehensive to approve such a modern and emotionally intense performance at the supposed somber royal event. Reportedly, Charles, who was once again worried about upholding royal dignity and tradition, voiced his disapproval of Elton's plan to sing "Candle in the Wind" during the burial. The more solemn parts of the event, such as the royal family's ceremonial mourning, were his main concern, and he was worried that the public's emotional outpouring would steal the show. The decision to allow Elton to play came when the Dean of Westminster intervened, who understood the significance of letting the audience grieve in an honest way. The Dean was cognizant of the fact that Princess Diana's passing had an emotional impact on millions of people and that her burial service should honor it. The fact that Elton knew Charles had been nervous about his performance just added fuel to the fire of an already intense day for him. His homage to Diana was meant for more than just her. He understood it was for everyone who had loved her. However, Elton and the royal family were visibly divided as he and Charles exhibited obvious signs of friction. Prince Harry, Diana's youngest son, was a conduit through which Elton maintained ties to the royal family, despite his strained relationship with King Charles. After Diana's death, the unique affinity that Harry and Elton had shared since they were little only became stronger. Harry started to seek out Elton for advice and encouragement as he got older. Elton, who had great respect for Diana's kindness and generosity, found similar traits in Harry. Being a part of the royal family was an enormous burden, and he was resolved to assist Harry in overcoming it, just as Diana had done for him before. Their friendship was solidified in 2018 when Elton performed at the wedding of Harry and Meghan Markle. The act went beyond a mere performance. It symbolized Elton's profound love for Diana's children and his will to support them, despite the growing tension between them and the rest of the royal family. As a result of the growing rift between Harry and his father, King Charles, Elton was once again embroiled in a royal scandal. Over the past few years, Elton has been an outspoken supporter of Harry and Meghan Markle, who have been the subjects of constant media attention. He was adamant about protecting Diana's children from the media's relentless pursuit after witnessing it himself. Elton was the one who put the record straight when claims surfaced that Harry and Meghan were engaging in environmental hypocrisy due to their usage of private aircraft. The fact that he had arranged for the planes to take them to his nice house and paid for all the carbon offsets was something he came clean about. Elton made an impassioned public speech in which he backed the marriage and denounced the press's harsh treatment of them. However, Elton's support for Harry and Meghan was not without repercussions. He further alienated himself from the royal family, notably King Charles, for publicly endorsing the pair despite royal constraints. Ultimately, this was the last straw that broke Elton's connection to the royal family. His allegiance was plainly with Harry and Meghan. It wasn't only about protecting his buddies. Elton wanted to defend the principles he and Diana had shared. He was now standing up for Diana's children, whom he had always respected for their bravery in the face of injustice. After being together for so long, Elton thinks back on his time with Diana. King Charles has never, in his opinion, quite grasped the magnitude of her legacy, but one thing is certain: it is more lasting than ever. The influence Charles had on Diana's life and death has been discussed openly by Elton in recent interviews. His view is that Diana's public and private struggles were exacerbated by Charles's unwillingness to embrace her emotional and humanitarian side and his fixation on preserving the royal family's reputation. When asked about Diana, Elton said she stood for more than just the royal family. Empathy, compassion, and transformation were all embodied in her. What made her special was her knack for striking up genuine conversations with complete strangers, overcoming all obstacles of protocol and protocol-bound behavior. Despite the unfortunate end to her life, her impact is felt all across the globe. There is a mix of adoration and regret in Elton's thoughts about Diana's legacy. Even though he is sad about losing a buddy who had so much potential, he is glad for the tremendous influence she had while she was here on Earth. His dedication to paying tribute to Diana has never faltered, even if his relationship with King Charles is still tense. Elton John's choice to finally address his history with Diana and Charles was more than simply a shocking discovery. Even though this was the 1,000th time the narrative had been told, he was certain that his words would reawaken old scars and rekindle public interest. Elton was narrating the tale from his own unique point of view, revealing information that had previously remained hidden. Elton says goodbye with profound grief, explaining that he and Diana became estranged due to the stresses of royal life and Charles's influence. He considers the intricate relationships of the royal family, the strain it put on Diana, and how her children are impacted by those same demands. Above all else, Elton's choice to speak out shows how Diana's life and legacy continue to have an influence. Although he is well aware that his words will not alter the past, he wants to pay tribute to the lady he cherished by speaking the truth. Elton said what was on his mind when he broke his silence. He wanted to make sure that Diana's memory will endure in the hearts of her fans and those who never met her. Diana and Elton's relationship is stronger than ever as he begins a new chapter in his life. His devotion to Diana will remain central to his tale, even if he and the royal family will never be really friends.